The morning sun spilled through the tall windows of the Ward estate, painting the marble floors in shades of gold. Everything about the house gleamed with the kind of perfection that only money could buy. The imported roses by the staircase, the polished portraits of smiling faces, the faint scent of expensive perfume lingering in the air. Elena Ward moved gracefully through it all, a vision of composure and quiet warmth. To the outside world, she had everything: beauty, grace, and a family name that opened doors before she even knocked. The youngest daughter of Harold and Vivian Ward, owners of Ward International, she had been raised to embody elegance and kindness. And she had never failed them. At least, not until today. The breakfast table felt colder than usual that morning. Her father sat stiffly at the head of the table, newspaper folded neatly in his hands. Her mother's lips were pressed into a thin, pale line. And beside them, her older brother Luke avoided her gaze altogether. Elena set her cup down carefully, the soft clink echoing louder than it should have. "Is something wrong?" Her mother's fingers trembled as she passed a white envelope across the table. "The hospital called. They said there was a problem with the blood test we took last week." Elena frowned. "The one for father's transplant match? They said they just needed it for compatibility." Her father cut her off, voice sharp as a blade. "That test revealed something else." Silence thickened. Her heart began to pound. Her father pushed a stack of documents toward her. "According to these results, Elena, you are not our biological daughter." The world tilted. For a moment, she didn't understand what he'd said. The words made sense, but their meaning refused to take root. "That's impossible," she whispered. "There must be some mistake." Her mother's chair screeched against the marble as she stood. "Don't you dare lie, Elena. The doctors confirmed it. Your DNA doesn't match ours. You're not a Ward." The sound of glass breaking filled the silence. Elena's teacup had slipped from her trembling hands. Mother, please," she stammered, eyes wide. "You raised me. You watched me grow. How can you believe?" "We believed in a lie." Vivian snapped, voice trembling between anger and hysteria. "All these years, we treated you like our own, while our real daughter, our flesh and blood, was out there suffering. How could you let this happen?" Elena stared, throat closing around her words. "I didn't know," she whispered. "I swear, I didn't know." Her father's eyes were cold and distant now, the warmth she'd known all her life gone as if it had never existed. "Pack your things," he said. "You'll leave this house today. We've already contacted the hospital. They've located our real daughter." "Leave." The word barely escaped her lips. "Father, you can't mean that. This family has no place for strangers." The air left her lungs. She looked to her brother, desperate, but Luke only turned away. And when she turned toward her mother, she saw tears, not for her, but for the phantom daughter they had never met. It was then that Adrian entered the room. Tall, calm, impossibly handsome, her fiancé of 3 years. His eyes darted between Elena and her parents, confusion giving way to grim understanding. "Elena," he said slowly, "is this true?" Tears burned her eyes. "Adrian, you don't believe this, do you? You know me. You know I know," he said softly, "that you're not a Ward." He hesitated, then added, "Our family's engagement was built on that connection. If it's not real, we can't continue this." Her heart broke then, not quietly, but in sharp, echoing pieces that filled her chest with pain. "Adrian," she whispered, "please." But he only lowered his eyes. "I'm sorry." The next hours blurred into fragments, the sound of her mother's sobs, the rustle of servants whispering behind closed doors, the sharp chill of the wind as she stood at the gates of the only home she'd ever known. Her suitcase felt too light. Her heart, far too heavy. When the iron gates closed behind her, it felt final, like a sentence. She turned once, hoping for a glance, a call, a hand reaching out. But there was nothing. Only silence. As the sun sank behind the mansion's tall walls, Elena whispered to the wind, "If I was never your daughter, then who am I?" The answer would come, someday. But not before she lost everything first. The following week, the Ward estate was filled with laughter again. Music drifted from the ballroom, maids hurried with fresh linens, and the scent of imported lilies wafted through the hallways. Everything sparkled as though the house itself wanted to erase every trace of Elena's existence. Because today, their real daughter had come home. Her name was Ivy, the lost Ward heiress, found after 22 years. The family welcomed her with tears and embraces, Every word of love that once belonged to Elena now spoken for someone else. Vivian Ward wept openly as she clasped Ivy's hands. My darling, my baby girl. We've missed so many years. But we'll make it right, I promise. Ivy's lips curved into a gentle smile. You don't have to apologize, Mother. I'm just happy to be home. Her voice was soft, her manner sweet, the kind of perfection that made people sigh with relief. But behind her eyes glimmered something calculating, almost cold. Harold Ward placed a diamond necklace around her neck, the same one Elena had worn at her debut. From now on, everyone will know who the true Miss Ward is. Ivy's fingers brushed the diamonds. They'll never forget, she murmured. Across the city, the world had turned grey for Elena. She sat in a small rented room above a bakery, her single suitcase tucked under the bed, her phone silent for days. Every time she thought about calling, she remembered her father's words, this family has no place for strangers. It was raining again. She'd lost track of the days. Her reflection in the cracked mirror looked like a stranger too, her once perfect hair tangled, her eyes hollow. The elegant daughter of the Wards was gone, replaced by a girl with shaking hands and an empty future. A knock at the door startled her. When she opened it, she found a man standing there, mid-30s, with kind eyes behind rimless glasses. Miss Ward, he asked gently. I'm Dr. Rowan Hale. From the hospital. Elena stiffened. I'm not a Ward anymore, she said quietly. He studied her for a moment, then offered a small smile. Maybe not by name. But I think you deserve to know the truth about what happened. She hesitated, then stepped aside. Come in. Dr. Hale sat at the edge of the old sofa, removing a folder from his briefcase. I was part of the team that processed the DNA samples for your father's transplant. After the results came in, something bothered me. The records didn't match the hospital's birth archives. Elena frowned. What do you mean? He spread the papers before her. The babies born on the same night as you. There were 2 girls. One registered under your mother's name, Vivian Ward, and another under a woman named Marissa Crane. But the blood types don't align with either family's genetic profile. I don't understand. I think there was a switch, he said simply. Someone altered the records. Your blood, your DNA, it all matches the Wards perfectly. You're their biological daughter, Elena. The test they used was tampered with. Her breath caught. For a long time, she couldn't speak. You're saying, they threw away the real daughter. Dr. Hale's expression softened. It looks that way. But without solid proof, confronting them now would only backfire. Whoever arranged this knew what they were doing. Elena stared down at the papers, the truth pressing heavy against her chest. Her whole life, taken from her by one lie. And the imposter, Ivy, was living in her place. Her voice was barely a whisper. Why would someone do this? Dr. Hale hesitated. Money. Power. Perhaps revenge. But I promise you, Miss Elena, you weren't a mistake. You were meant to be there. Tears welled in her eyes, but this time, she didn't let them fall. Instead, something colder, sharper began to take root where the hurt had been. Then I'll take it back, she said quietly. Everything. My name. My home. My life. Dr. Hale watched her, something like admiration flickering in his gaze. Then you'll need help. And patience. The truth doesn't just reveal itself, it has to be proven. I have nothing left to lose, Elena said. So I'll start from there. That night, as the rain tapped softly against the window, Elena unfolded a blank page and began to write. Not a diary, not a letter, but a promise. You threw away your treasure for a lie. One day, you'll realize it. And by then, I'll be the one standing above you. Outside, the city lights glimmered faintly through the mist, and somewhere beyond them, in her stolen mansion, Ivy Ward smiled at her reflection, utterly unaware that the girl she'd replaced was already planning her return. Days turned into weeks, and the rain finally gave way to sunlight. Elena walked through the city with her head down, the world moving around her as if she were invisible. The once beloved heiress now blended in with the crowd. No limousine, no designer coat, no admiring glances. Just another forgotten girl. But the fire inside her hadn't gone out. If anything, it burned brighter. She spent her mornings working part-time at the bakery downstairs, kneading dough and sweeping floors to pay for rent. At night, she met Dr. Hale at his small clinic, poring over hospital records, adoption files, and archived DNA samples. The truth, it turned out, was buried under layers of lies. Here, Rowan said one evening, spreading documents across the table. This is the nurse who handled both births, a woman named Cynthia Moore. She worked at St. Bernadette Hospital for nearly 20 years before retiring to the countryside. She's the only one who had access to both infants' identification tags. Elena leaned closer, scanning the faded photograph clipped to the file, a woman with tired eyes and a forced smile. You think she did it? Rowan nodded. There were irregular payments to her bank account right after the births. Large sums, transferred anonymously. Then, 2 months later, she bought a house outright in cash. That doesn't happen on a nurse's salary. Elena's grip tightened on the paper. So someone paid her to switch me and Ivy. It appears so. But the records don't say who made the payments. Her stomach turned. She thought of her parents, no, their parents, smiling as they welcomed Ivy home. Of the way Vivian had clung to her replacement as if making up for lost time. If they'd ever known the truth, would they still have thrown her out? Maybe they didn't just want a child, Elena said softly. Maybe they wanted her. Ivy's family must have had something they needed. Rowan gave a thoughtful hum. The Cranes were connected to Ward International's competitors in those years. A merger, perhaps, or leverage. Elena's eyes hardened. Then it wasn't fate. It was business. That night, Elena stood on the rooftop outside her apartment, the city lights stretching endlessly below. The wind tugged at her hair as she stared toward the glittering skyline, the same skyline she used to look down on from her old bedroom window. For the first time since being cast out, she allowed herself to remember. Her mother's smile when she'd passed her exams. Her father's proud applause when she'd given her first charity speech. Adrian's hand in hers as they'd promised forever. All of it, a lie she'd lived too well. A sound pulled her back to the present. Her phone buzzing in her pocket. It was a message from an unknown number. Unknown. Miss Ward. Or should I say, Miss Gray? I hear you've been asking questions. Her heart skipped. Gray. The name she'd recently started using in paperwork and at work. Very few people knew it. Elena. Who is this? Unknown. Someone who knows the truth about the swap. Meet me at Pier 19 tomorrow night, 8 p.m. Come alone. The next day passed in a blur of tension. Rowan wanted to go with her, but Elena insisted otherwise. If it's a trap, I can't risk dragging you into it, she said. He frowned. You shouldn't go alone. I've been alone since the day they shut those gates, she replied quietly. When the evening came, the docks were almost deserted. The air was thick with salt and fog. Elena stood beneath a flickering street lamp, her coat drawn tight. Every creak of the wooden planks made her pulse quicken. Then she saw her, a frail, older woman emerging from the shadows, leaning on a cane. Miss Ward, she said, her voice rough but unmistakably firm. You don't know me, but I know you. Cynthia Moore, Elena breathed. The woman nodded slowly. I didn't think you'd come. Most people would have accepted their fate and disappeared. Elena took a cautious step closer. You switched me and Ivy. Cynthia's lips trembled. Yes, I did. Silence. The admission cut through the cold air like a blade. I was paid, Cynthia went on. I was drowning in debt. A man in a grey suit came to me with an offer. He said the Ward's child needed to be protected. That there was a threat, and the swap was only temporary. But when I realized what they'd done, it was too late. The money, the contract, it vanished. I tried to tell someone, but no one would believe me. Elena's voice shook. Who was he? The man who paid you. I don't know his name, the nurse said, shaking her head. But I remember the ring he wore, a gold crest with the initials AC. Elena froze. The world seemed to stop around her. Adrian Cole. The man she'd loved. The man who had abandoned her the moment the lie surfaced. Her mind reeled. Could it be true? Had Adrian known all along? Cynthia reached into her bag and pulled out a small envelope. These are copies of the records I kept. Proof. I've been waiting years for someone to ask for them. Take them, and make things right. Before Elena could respond, the woman turned and disappeared into the fog, leaving only the faint echo of her footsteps behind. Elena stared at the envelope in her hands, her pulse pounding. Her fingers trembled as she whispered, You knew, Adrian, and you still let them destroy me. The envelope felt heavy, not just with paper, but with the weight of betrayal. As the first drops of rain began to fall again, Elena lifted her gaze toward the dark skyline. She wasn't just a discarded daughter anymore. She was a storm gathering strength, and the people who'd thrown her away were about to learn that even a fallen girl could rise again. Elena didn't sleep that night. The city glimmered faintly beyond her window, but her thoughts were darker than the streets below. She sat at her desk with the small envelope before her, its edges damp from the rain. Inside lay the truth, the evidence that could destroy everything the Wards and Adrian had built on lies. Her hands shook as she unfolded the documents. Birth records, transfer receipts, a signature, and a hospital form marked with an unfamiliar seal, Coal Industries. Her heart twisted. Adrian's family. So it was true. The Cole family, his father's company, his influence, had been part of the switch from the very beginning. Whether Adrian himself had known, she couldn't yet be sure. But the betrayal cut deep all the same. By morning, she'd made her choice. If the truth was tangled in power and bloodlines, she would need both cunning and patience to untangle it. Walking into that world again as Elena Ward would only get her thrown out, or worse, silenced. So she became someone new. She took her mother's maiden name, Gray, and filed a new business registration, Gray Consulting Group. Using the last of her savings and Rowan's connections, she built a quiet foundation. Nothing flashy, nothing suspicious, but enough to open doors into the same elite circle she'd once belonged to. By the time 3 months had passed, Elena Gray was no longer a forgotten girl. She was an emerging name in financial analysis, subtle yet respected. Her posture straightened again, her voice steadied, and the look in her eyes, once soft and trusting, was now sharp as glass. Rowan noticed the change before anyone else. "You've built this faster than I thought possible," he said, scanning the report she'd drafted. "You even secured a contract with the Ward Foundation subsidiaries." Elena smiled faintly. "They won't recognize me. It's amazing what a new hairstyle and a little silence can do." "You sound almost proud," he teased gently. "I'm determined," she corrected. "They took my name. I'll use a new one to take back everything else." Rowan leaned back, studying her. "Revenge can consume a person. Elena. I don't want you to lose yourself." "I already did," she said quietly. "Now I'm building someone better." Her first public appearance as Elena Gray came at a corporate charity gala hosted by the Cole family, the very empire that had once nearly been hers by marriage. The ballroom sparkled under chandeliers, full of glittering dresses and murmured power plays. Elena stood near the bar, her champagne untouched, her expression composed. No one gave her a second glance. To them, she was just another rising entrepreneur. Until she saw him. Adrian Cole. Standing tall in his black suit, speaking with investors as though nothing in the world could touch him. His voice, low, calm, familiar, cut through the music like a ghost from another life. Elena's breath caught, but she forced herself to remain still. She'd imagined this moment countless times, but now that it was here, the ache was real. She'd loved him once. Deeply. Foolishly. Now, she wondered what it would take to make him regret letting her go. He turned then, and his gaze brushed over her for the briefest moment. A flicker of recognition crossed his face, then confusion. He approached slowly, polite curiosity masking something deeper. "Miss Gray, is it?" he asked, offering his hand. "Adrian Cole." "Elena Gray," she said smoothly, shaking his hand. "It's a pleasure, Mr. Cole." His eyes lingered on hers a heartbeat too long. "Have we met before?" A smile ghosted her lips. "I don't believe so." He chuckled softly, though his gaze didn't waver. "You remind me of someone." "Someone you lost?" she asked, her tone light but deliberate. His expression faltered. "Perhaps." She tilted her head slightly. Then maybe she wasn't lost. Maybe she was simply forgotten. He frowned, as if the word struck somewhere he didn't expect. But before he could respond, another voice interrupted. "Elena Gray," a man announced warmly, stepping forward to greet her. It was one of the Ward Company executives. "We've heard much about your analysis work. You've impressed the right people." Adrian's brow furrowed. "You work with the Ward Foundation." "Among others," she replied. "It seems the world is smaller than we think." Her calm composure only seemed to intrigue him further. But beneath her poised exterior, Elena's pulse thundered. Standing there, smiling at the man who might have destroyed her life, she felt a power she hadn't known before, a quiet, dangerous confidence. Later that night, after she'd left the gala, she stood outside beneath the soft glow of city lights. The wind carried the faint sound of laughter from inside the ballroom, and for the first time in months, she allowed herself a small smile. Adrian hadn't recognized her, not yet. But she'd seen something in his eyes, something that told her the past wasn't entirely buried. Good. Let him wonder. Let him chase the ghost of the girl he'd thrown away. She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out the envelope Cynthia Moore had given her. The papers inside were creased and worn now, but they were her anchor, the proof of who she truly was. You threw away your treasure for a lie, she whispered into the night. Now I'll make you see the difference. Her phone buzzed, a message from Rowan. Rowan, are you sure you're ready for what comes next? Elena, I was born ready. They just forgot who I am. She closed her phone and looked up at the glittering skyline, the world that had once cast her aside. This time, she wasn't climbing back for love or belonging. This time, she was climbing to reclaim her crown. By the time summer arrived, Elena Gray had become a quiet yet undeniable presence in the business world. Her company, Gray Consulting Group, operated like a ghost, unseen but influential. She made herself indispensable to the Ward Foundation subsidiaries, guiding investments, restructuring departments, and spotting flaws no one else dared mention. Every recommendation she made chipped away at Ivy's fragile position. And every success drew Adrian Cole's attention closer. At the Ward estate, Ivy basked in a life she didn't understand. She wore designer gowns, attended charity luncheons, and spoke in rehearsed elegance. But the cracks in her facade were growing. Numbers confused her, executives dismissed her, and journalists began whispering that the real Miss Ward seemed strangely unpolished. Vivian refused to hear it. She's just adjusting, she told anyone who questioned Ivy's missteps. She wasn't raised with privilege, she needs time. But Harold Ward's patience was thinner. Their company's profits were slipping, board members restless. And the mysterious consultant, Miss Gray, was the only one whose advice seemed to stabilize them. Invite her to the next executive dinner, Harold ordered his secretary. I want to meet this woman myself. Elena arrived at the dinner in a black satin dress that caught the light like water. The Wards sat at the head of the long table, unaware that the daughter they'd cast out was walking toward them. She held her composure with surgical precision, chin high, eyes calm, every step deliberate. Mr. and Mrs. Ward, she greeted smoothly when introduced. It's an honor to meet you. Vivian smiled politely. Miss Gray, thank you for your contributions. My husband speaks highly of your insight. Elena inclined her head. I'm only doing my part to help the company reach its potential. Her gaze flicked to Ivy, seated beside them, glittering in diamonds that once belonged to her. For a heartbeat, their eyes met, and Elena saw something there. Recognition. Fear. Ivy's smile faltered for half a second before she quickly masked it with a laugh. Miss Gray, Ivy said lightly, your name sounds familiar. Have we met? Elena smiled. Not that I recall. But I've read a lot about you, Miss Ward. You're quite famous these days. The faintest edge laced her tone, so subtle that only Ivy seemed to notice it. The imposter's fingers tightened around her glass. Dinner passed in smooth conversation. Elena handled each question with poise, weaving truths and half-truths together like silk. Harold was impressed, Vivian was charmed, and Adrian, who sat across the table, was silent, watching her every move. When the guests dispersed later that evening, Adrian caught up to her in the hallway. Miss Gray, he called. She turned slowly. Mr. Cole. He studied her, eyes narrowing. You're different from the rest of them. You speak like someone who's lived this world before. Maybe I've observed carefully, she replied. Experience isn't always born from privilege. He hesitated. I've met many people, but there's something familiar. Her lips curved faintly. Perhaps you're mistaking me for someone you used to know. His jaw tightened. Perhaps I am. They stood there for a moment, two people bound by a truth neither could yet speak. Then Adrian stepped back, his voice low. Whoever you are, Miss Gray, I hope you know what you're playing with. The Wards aren't as gentle as they appear. I learned that firsthand, she murmured. He frowned. What do you mean? But she only smiled. Good night, Mr. Cole. And before he could question her further, she turned and disappeared into the glow of the chandeliers. Over the following weeks, Elena's quiet war continued. She revealed small mistakes Ivy made in her reports, corrected errors that no one else caught, and leaked harmless rumors about Ivy's incompetence to the press. Each move was precise, a scalpel, not a sword. Soon, articles began to appear. Ward heiress struggles to lead amid investor doubts. Anonymous consultant saves Ward Foundation from financial misstep. Vivian refused to believe them. Harold grew cold. Ivy grew desperate. One afternoon, Ivy stormed into the consulting office, disguised in sunglasses and fury. Elena looked up from her desk, composed as ever. Miss Ward. To what do I owe the pleasure? Ivy slammed her hand on the desk. Drop the act. I know who you are. Elena didn't flinch. Do you? You think you can fool everyone with your fancy business tricks, but I know it's you. Elena Ward. Ivy spat the name like venom. You're pathetic, pretending to be someone else. Elena leaned back, eyes cool and unreadable. You're mistaken. My name is Elena Gray. You, Ivy stopped, shaking with rage. You can't have it back. Do you hear me? You'll never have it back. Elena's voice dropped to a near whisper. You're clinging to something that was never yours. Ivy's glare trembled. They'll never believe you. Maybe not today. Elena rose from her chair, stepping closer until their faces were inches apart. But truth doesn't vanish just because liars shout louder. For a moment, the room was silent except for Ivy's unsteady breathing. Then she turned and stormed out, slamming the door behind her. Elena let out a slow exhale. Her hands were trembling, but her eyes burned with steady purpose. Ivy's panic meant one thing: the mask was cracking. Later that night, Adrian called. I don't know who you really are, he said, his voice low and tense over the phone, but Ivy's terrified of you. She says you're dangerous. Elena smiled faintly to herself. If truth is dangerous, then yes, I suppose I am. Tell me the truth, he demanded. Who are you? Elena paused, letting the silence stretch just long enough to make him doubt his own memories. Maybe, she said finally, her voice like velvet, I'm someone you shouldn't have forgotten. And with that, she ended the call. Standing by her window, the city glittering beneath her, Elena whispered into the night. The more they struggle, the easier they make it for me to win. The wind carried her words like a promise. She was no longer the girl they'd thrown away. She was the storm they'd created. The tension in the city's high circles was thick enough to cut. Rumors about the Ward's long-lost daughter were no longer whispered, they were shouted in conference rooms, printed in tabloids, and analyzed by rival families eager for scandal. Ivy's image, once shining, now hung by a thread. And through it all, Elena Gray remained the one woman no one could quite place, elegant, brilliant, and always one step ahead. But the higher she climbed, the more dangerous the truth became to hold. Adrian Cole couldn't sleep. He sat in his office late into the night, surrounded by piles of documents. Ivy's panic had unsettled him, but what haunted him more was the growing sense that Elena Gray was not a stranger. Every word she said, every glance, every subtle deflection, they all felt like echoes of someone he had loved. Someone he had betrayed. He opened his drawer and pulled out an old photo. Elena Ward smiling beneath spring blossoms, her eyes bright with trust. His chest tightened. He told himself he'd moved on, that breaking the engagement was the right thing to do for both families. But the guilt never faded. And now, this new woman with the same voice, the same quiet fire, it was like the past had returned to haunt him. His phone buzzed. A message from an anonymous number. If you want the truth about Elena Ward, come to St. Bernadette Hospital. Tonight. Alone. Adrian frowned. The name sparked a memory, the hospital where the Ward and Crane babies were born. Where the DNA test had been processed. He grabbed his coat and left. The hospital's old records wing was quiet and dimly lit. Dust motes floated in the air like ghosts. Adrian moved through the rows of files until he reached the archives. A woman in a nurse's uniform waited there, older, with a tired face and shaking hands. Mr. Cole, she asked softly. I was told you'd come. He nodded cautiously. You are? Cynthia Moore, she said. I was the nurse on duty the night the Ward child was born. The name hit him like a cold wind. What is this about? Her voice trembled. You need to know the truth. The switch. It wasn't an accident. It was arranged. And your father's company, Cole Industries, paid for it. Adrian felt the world tilt beneath him. That's impossible. I have proof. She handed him an envelope. I kept copies all these years, waiting for someone to ask. I thought you should see them. He opened the file, bank transfers, hospital records, a contract sealed with Cole Industries insignia. His father's signature stared back at him in ink that hadn't yet faded. His stomach twisted. Why would he do this? To secure the merger between Ward International and Crane Holdings, Cynthia whispered. The Crane's daughter was sickly. The Wards wanted a healthy heir to maintain their image. The Cole family brokered the deal, a favor for their future in-laws. Adrian staggered back. He felt sick. So, Elena Ward was the real daughter all along. The nurse nodded. And the girl they replaced her with was Ivy Crane. The truth slammed into him like a physical blow. Every memory, Elena's tears, her pleas, the betrayal in her eyes, all of it came rushing back, sharper now, crueler. He had broken her heart to protect a lie his family had created. When Adrian finally left the hospital, the night air felt suffocating. His phone buzzed again, but he ignored it. He walked for blocks without thinking, until he found himself outside the Ward Foundation building, and saw her. Elena Gray stood there beneath the streetlight, calm and radiant as ever. For a long moment, he just watched her, realizing that every suspicion, every flicker of recognition, had been right. It was her. Elena, he breathed. She froze. Slowly, she turned. Her expression didn't change, but something flickered behind her eyes. Shock, then resignation. Mr. Cole, she said evenly. You shouldn't be here. It is you, he said, stepping closer. All this time, Elena Ward. You're alive. Her jaw tightened. Alive. Yes. But not who you think I am. I found the truth, he said, his voice low and raw. The switch. The payment. My father's signature. You were the real daughter. They threw you away for a deal my family made. Her silence was like ice. Finally, she said quietly, so now you understand. I understand that I destroyed the wrong person, Adrian said. That I failed you. You didn't just fail me, she said, eyes glinting. You helped bury me. He swallowed hard. Then let me help fix it. Elena laughed softly, a sound more sad than cruel. Fix it? You can't undo 22 years of lies with an apology, Adrian. He stepped closer. Then tell me what to do. Tell me how to make this right. She looked up at him, her voice trembling even as her eyes stayed cold. You can start by standing aside. Because when the truth comes out, I won't stop it for anyone, not even you. Adrian hesitated, searching her face for any trace of the girl he'd loved. But what he saw now was something else, strength, pain, and the quiet fire of a woman who had risen from her own ashes. Elena, he began, but she turned away. Good night, Mr. Cole, she said softly, and walked into the night. When she returned to her apartment, Elena's hands were still shaking. Rowan was waiting there, worry creasing his features. You saw him, he said. Yes, she whispered. And now he knows everything. Rowan nodded slowly. That means they'll move fast. The moment Adrian confronts his father, the Wards will hear of it. You won't have much time. Elena's gaze hardened. Then I'll end it before they do. She looked toward the city skyline, its towers gleaming like mirrors of the past. Every secret, every betrayal, every tear had led to this. The storm she'd been gathering was finally ready to break. The night of the Ward Foundation's anniversary gala glittered with luxury. Crystal chandeliers bathed the grand ballroom in gold light, violins played softly from the corner, and the city's elite gathered to toast the Ward family's legacy of excellence. Cameras flashed, reporters smiled. Everything was perfect, on the surface. Beneath that glitter, secrets trembled. For Elena Gray, this was the night she'd been waiting for. She stood at the edge of the ballroom, calm and poised in an ivory gown that shimmered faintly under the lights. Her hair, once golden and soft, was swept back in a sleek knot, her face framed by quiet strength. To anyone else, she was a powerful consultant, an honored guest. To those who knew the truth, she was judgment incarnate. Across the room, Ivy Ward laughed for the photographers, every inch the doted daughter. Harold and Vivian stood beside her, proud smiles painted carefully in place. And just a few steps behind them stood Adrian Cole, his expression unreadable, his gaze occasionally flickering toward the woman in white who had once been his world. Elena met his eyes briefly. He gave the faintest nod. They both knew what tonight would bring. The speeches began. Harold Ward took the stage, thanking partners and guests, boasting of the company's resilience. Ivy followed, reading from a paper with trembling hands, her smile tight but practiced. When she finished, the applause was polite, strained. That was Elena's cue. As the lights dimmed for the final toast, she moved forward, her heels clicking softly against the marble. The murmur of the crowd rose as she took the microphone from the stand. Good evening, she began, her voice calm, carrying easily through the silence that followed. My name is Elena Gray. Many of you know me as a consultant for the Ward Foundation. But tonight, I'd like to tell you a different story, one that began 22 years ago. Harold frowned, exchanging glances with Vivian. Ivy's face paled. I was born on the same night as Ivy Ward, Elena continued. But due to a hospital switch, the two of us were exchanged at birth. The truth was hidden for decades, covered up by greed, money, and lies. Gasps rippled through the room. Vivian stepped forward. This is absurd. How dare you make such claims? Elena held up a document, a DNA test, hospital reports, Cynthia Moore's signed confession. I have proof. The nurse who performed the switch confessed before witnesses. The records show that I, not Ivy, am the biological daughter of Harold and Vivian Ward. The crowd erupted. Reporters surged forward, flashes blinding. Ivy's voice broke through the noise, high and panicked. You're lying. You forged those documents. You're jealous because they threw you out. Elena turned to her, her voice slicing through the chaos. They threw me out because of a lie you lived. You wore my name, my life, my family, and you let me suffer for it. I didn't know. Ivy cried, but her voice faltered. I didn't. You knew enough to enjoy it, Elena said coldly. And you were content to let me disappear. Harold stared at the papers in shock, his hand shaking. Vivian, the blood type results, they match, my God. Vivian's lips trembled. No, this can't be true. But Adrian's voice cut through the noise. It is. All heads turned to him. He stepped onto the stage, his face grave. My father's company was part of the cover-up. I've seen the records myself. What she's saying is true. The silence that followed was suffocating. Vivian took an unsteady step back, staring at Elena as if seeing her for the first time. Elena, my daughter. Elena's voice trembled, but her eyes did not. You called me a stranger. You told me to leave. Do you remember? Tears welled in Vivian's eyes. I didn't know. You didn't want to know, Elena said quietly. You believed the lie because it was easier than believing in me. The words hit like thunder. Around them, the guests whispered, the cameras clicked, and Ivy sank to the floor, her mask shattered. When it was over, the ballroom emptied quickly. The press had everything they needed: scandal, confession, proof. The Ward family's empire was shaken to its core. Elena stood by the balcony, the night air cool against her skin. Adrian approached, silent, his expression heavy with guilt. You kept your promise, he said softly. You made them see. She didn't look at him. Truth is heavier than revenge. It doesn't feel like victory. It's justice, he said. She turned to face him then, her eyes glinting. Justice doesn't bring back what I lost. It doesn't undo the years I spent believing I wasn't enough. Adrian hesitated, then reached for her hand. I can't erase the past, Elena, but I can stand beside you now, if you'll let me. For a long moment, she said nothing. The city glittered behind him, the sound of sirens distant in the night. Finally, she withdrew her hand. You stood by them when I needed you most. You chose comfort over truth. I won't do the same. He flinched, but nodded slowly. Then at least let me help you rebuild. Her expression softened, just slightly. You already did. You told the truth. And with that, she turned away, the moonlight tracing the outline of a woman who had once been broken, and now walked with quiet power. Inside, Vivian watched her from afar, tears streaking her cheeks. Harold stood beside her, hollow and pale. The woman they'd thrown away had returned not as a daughter, but as judgment. She has your eyes, Harold murmured. Vivian pressed a hand to her chest. And your strength. They knew then what they had lost, and that no apology would ever be enough. Outside, Elena paused at the top of the steps. The city wind carried the sound of her name whispered through the crowd. Not Elena Gray, not the consultant, but Elena Ward. She closed her eyes, breathing it in. You threw away your treasure for a lie, she whispered. Now you'll live with the truth. The flash of cameras behind her caught her face, calm, resolute, untouchable. She descended the stairs without looking back. The storm after the gala hit like wildfire. By morning, every headline screamed the same story. The true heiress returns. Elena Ward exposes birth switch. Ward Foundation in turmoil as false daughter's identity revealed. Stock prices trembled. Executives scrambled. And the once pristine Ward family mansion was surrounded by cameras and chaos. But inside, the world was silent. Vivian sat at the dining table, still in last night's gown, her hands trembling around a cup of untouched tea. Harold stood by the window, staring at the reporters outside. His expression was blank, but the weight of ruin clung to him like dust. "I never thought," Vivian whispered hoarsely, "that the child we cherished was a lie. That she—" Harold turned. "We made her into a lie, Vivian. All of us did." The door opened quietly. They both looked up. Elena stood in the entryway, composed as ever. No security guards, no media entourage, just her, in a simple black coat and steady eyes. Vivian's lips parted. "Elena." "Mrs. Ward," she said softly, her tone polite but distant. "Or should I say, Mother?" Vivian rose instantly, tears spilling over. "Elena, please. Let me explain." "There's nothing left to explain," Elena said. Her voice didn't rise, but the calmness in it was sharper than any shout. "You believed a stranger over your own child. You looked me in the eye and threw me away." Vivian covered her mouth, sobbing. "I didn't know." Elena's eyes flickered. "And if you had known? Would you have loved me then? Or would you still have chosen the girl who looked like your dream?" Silence. Vivian's sobs broke into the quiet. Harold cleared his throat, voice heavy. "Elena, your mother and I, we can't undo what's been done. But we want to make things right. The foundation, the estate, everything. It's yours by law and by birth. We want you home." Elena smiled faintly, but there was no warmth in it. "Home," she echoed. "You mean the place where I was told I didn't belong? Where I was called a fraud?" She stepped closer, her heels echoing on the marble. "Do you know what it feels like to beg for love from people who look at you like you're dirt under their shoes? To be treated like a stain on the perfect picture?" Vivian collapsed into her chair, weeping. "Elena, please." Elena's voice cracked just once, barely audible. "I would have given anything for you to hold me that day. Just once. To believe in me." Then her face hardened again. "But now I understand. You didn't lose me that night. You threw me away." Vivian reached for her hand. "Let me make it right, please." Elena stepped back. "You can't." Harold's voice broke through, quiet and resigned. "Then what will you do?" Elena met his gaze evenly. "Take back what's mine. Not out of vengeance, but because it belongs to me. And after that, I'll decide what remains of the Ward legacy." She turned to leave, but paused at the door. "I won't destroy the company," she said softly. "But I won't protect it either. If it survives, it will do so without lies." Then she was gone. Outside, reporters swarmed her, shouting questions. "Elena, will you assume the Ward Foundation chair? Is it true Ivy Crane has fled the country? Are you seeking legal action?" Elena didn't answer. She simply walked through the sea of microphones, calm and regal, as though none of it could touch her. But her steps faltered for the briefest moment when she saw Adrian waiting by his car. He opened the door for her silently. "Get in. Please." She hesitated, then sighed and slipped inside. They drove in silence for a while, the city sprawling past them, glass and light and noise fading into distance. Finally, Adrian said, "You were magnificent last night." Elena gave a humorless smile. "I wasn't trying to be." "You didn't have to try." He glanced at her. "The world saw what I should have seen all along." She looked out the window. The world sees stories, not scars. Adrian gripped the steering wheel. "I keep thinking about what that nurse said, about my father's role. I don't know how to face him." "You face him with truth," Elena said. "It's the only thing that survives lies." He nodded slowly. "And you? What will you do now?" She thought for a long time before answering. "I don't know. For years, I dreamed of coming back, of making them kneel. But standing there last night, I didn't feel powerful. I just felt tired." Adrian's voice softened. "You've carried this alone for too long." She turned to him then, her gaze sharp and unguarded. "Don't pity me, Adrian. You were part of it." He flinched. "I know." She studied him for a moment longer, then sighed. "But I also know you told the truth when you didn't have to. That's more than most would do." A fragile peace settled between them. Outside, the dawn light began to break, pale gold spilling over the skyline. By the end of the week, the Ward Foundation issued a public statement. Elena Ward reinstated as legal heir and majority shareholder. Ivy Crane under investigation for identity fraud. The scandal rocked the business world, but for Elena, it felt strangely hollow. Victory, she realized, wasn't loud. It was quiet, cold, and a little sad. Rowan found her sitting by the office window one evening, papers scattered across her desk. "So," he said carefully, "you've done it. You're the rightful heiress. What now?" Elena didn't look up. "I rebuild. Not what they had, something new." He smiled faintly. "And the Wards? They'll live," she said softly, "knowing what they lost. And Adrian?" She hesitated, her pen pausing mid-stroke. "Here's a reminder of what love means when it's tested, and what happens when it fails." Rowan nodded. "Do you still love him?" Elena exhaled. "I don't know. Maybe love doesn't die. It just becomes quieter, like a scar that stops hurting but never fades." That night, alone in her apartment, she opened her old keepsake box. Inside was a faded photograph, her, Adrian, and Ivy from years ago. The last moment before everything had shattered. She traced her finger over it once, then placed it back carefully. Her phone buzzed, a message from Adrian. "If you ever need someone to stand beside you again, I'll be there. No questions, no excuses. Just truth." She stared at it for a long moment, then typed only 3 words in reply. "It's too late." Then she turned off the phone, set it down, and whispered to the quiet room. "You threw away your treasure for a lie. And now I know my worth." The city outside hummed, endless, alive, and for the first time, Elena felt free. 2 months after the gala, the world had moved on, but the echoes of the scandal still rippled beneath every headline, every board meeting, every whispered conversation at high society luncheons. The Ward name, once a symbol of prestige, now carried the bitter taste of disgrace and pity. Vivian and Harold had retreated from public life, quietly donating millions in an effort to repair their image. Ivy Crane, or Ivy Ward, as the world had once known her, had vanished abroad, hunted by lawsuits and shame. And in the midst of the wreckage, Elena Ward rose from the ashes. Her name now appeared in business journals, not as a victim, but as a visionary. The real heiress. The survivor. The woman who turned ruin into rebirth. She'd taken over the remnants of Ward International and rebuilt it under a new name, Aurelia Holdings. "For gold refined by fire," she told the press when they asked what the name meant. "Because some things shine brighter after they've burned." The offices of Aurelia gleamed like the future, glass, steel, and quiet efficiency. Elena worked tirelessly, rebuilding her father's empire into her own, one decision at a time. The media called her ruthless. Investors called her brilliant. But those closest to her, Rowan, her assistant, her inner circle, saw the truth behind her composure. She worked not for revenge anymore, but for peace. And yet, sometimes, when the world went still and the city lights flickered against her windows, she wondered if peace was just another kind of illusion. One morning, Rowan walked in holding a folder. "You'll want to see this." Elena glanced up from her desk. "What is it?" He set the folder down. "An acquisition offer. From Coal Industries." Her pen stilled. The name hung in the air like smoke. Rowan continued carefully. "They want to merge with Aurelia's green tech division. Full partnership." Adrian Cole signed the proposal himself. Elena's eyes darkened. "He's bold. He's desperate," Rowan corrected. "Coal Industries is falling apart. His father resigned after the scandal. Adrian's been cleaning up the mess ever since." Elena leaned back, silent. Then, after a long pause, set a meeting. Rowan nodded, studying her expression. "You sure?" She gave a faint smile. "He asked for it." The meeting was set for Friday afternoon, at Aurelia's top-floor conference room, a space of glass walls, sunlight, and power. When Adrian Cole walked in, he looked nothing like the man she remembered. His usual polished confidence was replaced by quiet gravity. The lines at the corners of his eyes had deepened, but so had the sincerity behind them. "Elena," he greeted softly. She didn't rise from her seat. "Mr. Cole." He smiled faintly. Still formal, then. "This is business," she said evenly. "Then let's talk business." He sat across from her, opening the file. "We both know our industries are stronger together. The merger could." "Save your company," she interrupted. "Let's not pretend otherwise." He met her gaze. "And yours could benefit, too." Elena leaned forward, eyes cool. You want me to help the same empire that bought my pain? That funded the lie that destroyed my life? Adrian didn't flinch. I want to make it right. She laughed quietly. You still think there's a way to fix it? He hesitated, then said, no. But there's a way to build something honest from what's left. The words hung between them. For a long time, neither spoke. Finally, Elena said, if I agree to this merger, I don't do it for you. I know, Adrian said quietly. You do it for yourself. She looked at him, studying his face. The man who had once been her love, her betrayer, her reminder of everything she lost. And yet, as she sat across from him now, she realized something she hadn't before. He wasn't her past anymore. He was just another survivor of it. After the meeting, Adrian lingered by the door. There's something else I wanted to tell you. She paused, one hand on her tablet. Go on. My father, he said slowly, left the country. He asked me to deliver something to you before he did. He handed her a sealed envelope, embossed with the coal crest. She took it cautiously. What is this? His apology, Adrian said. And proof that he left every share of coal industries in my control. He wanted you to know the man who destroyed your life no longer has the power to hurt anyone. Elena stared at the envelope for a long moment before setting it aside. Apologies are for the guilty. I'm not interested in theirs. Then what are you interested in? Adrian asked quietly. Her gaze lifted to meet his, calm, steady, unflinching. Building a future that has nothing to do with any of you. He nodded once, accepting the weight of her words. Then let me be a part of that future, not to fix you, not to save you, just to stand beside you. She looked at him for a long time, her expression unreadable. Finally, she said softly, you stood beside a lie once. I don't know if I can trust you to stand beside the truth. He didn't argue. Then I'll wait until you do. And with that, he left. That night, Elena sat by her window again, the city glittering below. The envelope lay unopened on the desk beside her, a ghost she no longer cared to confront. Instead, she picked up her phone and called Rowan. Schedule the merger, she said. But on my terms. Understood, he replied. Adrian won't like it. He doesn't have to, she said. He just has to accept it. She ended the call and looked out into the horizon. I was ashes once, she whispered. Now I'm gold. Days later, a press conference was held. Aurelia Holdings and Coal Industries announced a strategic alliance for global sustainability projects. The media hailed it as the merger of redemption. But behind the cameras, when Adrian approached Elena after the announcement, she stopped him with a quiet smile. This isn't forgiveness, she said. I know, he replied. It's a beginning. For the first time, she didn't walk away. The world was quiet again. Months had passed since the merger. Aurelia Holdings had stabilized, and Elena Ward, once a name whispered in scandal, had become a symbol of rebirth. Her story appeared in magazines, documentaries, and even university case studies about identity, power, and resilience. But beyond the glitter and praise, Elena lived simply. She kept her home minimal, her circle small, her heart guarded. People said she had everything now, wealth, beauty, status. Only she knew what it had cost. It was a cold morning when Rowan entered her office, his face unreadable. Elena, he said quietly, you have a visitor. I told you no meetings today, she replied without looking up. I know, he said. But you'll want to see this one. Something in his tone made her look up. Who? Rowan hesitated. Ivy Crane. The name landed like a ghost in the room. For a moment, Elena said nothing. Only the sound of the city traffic below filled the silence. Send her in, she said finally. Ivy stepped in a few moments later, thinner than Elena remembered, dressed plainly, her once glamorous hair tied back. Her eyes, once sharp with envy, were now heavy with exhaustion and regret. Elena, she said softly. You look, well. Elena didn't smile. I am. Sit. Ivy obeyed, folding her hands tightly in her lap. The silence between them stretched, tense and fragile. After a long pause, Ivy spoke again. I didn't come to ask for anything. I just wanted to see you once, to say I'm sorry. Elena tilted her head. Sorry for what, exactly? For living my life? For letting them hate me? For taking everything I ever had? Ivy's voice cracked. For all of it. She took a shaky breath. I didn't know the truth at first, I swear I didn't. But when I found out, I was terrified. I thought if they knew, I'd lose everything. And I did. I lost them, the name, the money, all of it. Elena studied her for a long moment, then said quietly, "You lost what wasn't yours." Ivy nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. "I know. But that doesn't mean it doesn't hurt." Elena's gaze softened just slightly. "Pain doesn't make us innocent, Ivy. It just makes us human." Ivy looked up at her, desperate. "Do you hate me?" Elena was silent for a long time before answering. "I used to. Every night. I'd dream of seeing you crawl back and beg for forgiveness. But now, I don't feel hate anymore." Ivy's eyes widened. "You forgive me?" Elena shook her head. "No. Forgiveness isn't something I can give yet. But I understand you. And maybe that's the first step." Ivy bowed her head, shoulders shaking. "That's more than I deserve." Elena's voice was quiet but firm. "You're right." They sat in silence for a moment. Outside, the city continued to hum, a reminder that the world never paused for broken hearts. Finally, Ivy stood. "I'm leaving the country," she said. "There's nothing left for me here. I just wanted to say thank you for not destroying me when you could have." Elena looked at her steadily. "You destroyed yourself, Ivy. All I did was stop pretending it didn't happen." Ivy managed a small, tearful smile. "Goodbye, Elena. I hope you find peace." Elena didn't answer. She only watched as Ivy turned and left the room, the final shadow of her old life slipping quietly away. That evening, Elena found herself walking through the old Ward estate, now empty, awaiting sale. Dust covered the furniture, and sunlight filtered through the curtains in pale streaks. Every corner whispered memories. Her laughter as a child, her mother's cold glances, her father's distant silence. She stopped at the staircase where Vivian had once shouted at her to leave, her heart pounding with grief and disbelief. Now she stood there again, older, stronger, unbreakable. And for the first time, she felt nothing but calm. Vivian's voice echoed faintly in her memory. "You're not my daughter." She whispered back to the emptiness. "I was. You just didn't see me." Later, she walked to the garden behind the mansion, where the roses had overgrown into wild tangles. She knelt, brushing her fingers over a single bloom. Adrian found her there. "I thought I might find you here," he said softly, approaching. Elena glanced up at him. "You seem to know where ghosts like to linger." He smiled faintly. "Only yours." She looked away. "You shouldn't be here." "I wanted to tell you something," he said. "My father passed away last week. He left a final note addressed to you." He handed her a small folded letter. She took it but didn't open it right away. "What does it say?" she asked quietly. "I don't know," Adrian said. "But I think he wanted you to have the last word." Elena slipped the note into her pocket. "I don't need his words. The truth was enough." Adrian nodded, stepping closer. "And what about us?" She turned to him, her expression unreadable. "There is no us, Adrian. There's only what was, and what we've learned." His voice softened. "And what have you learned?" "That love built on lies will always collapse," she said. "But sometimes, from its ruins, something honest can grow." He smiled, sadness and admiration mingling in his eyes. "You've become everything they feared and everything I admired." She gave a small, bittersweet smile. "Then maybe we've both become what we were meant to be." He hesitated, then reached out, not to hold her, but to touch her hand gently, briefly. "I won't ask for forgiveness," he said. "But I'll always hope for it." She nodded. "Then hope quietly, Adrian." And with that, she turned and walked away, leaving him among the wild roses and the fading sunlight. That night, back at her apartment, Elena finally opened the letter. The handwriting was shaky, the paper old. "Elena, you were a casualty of my ambition. I told myself I did it for business, for legacy, for family. But the truth is, I did it because I could. I stole a child's life and called it strategy. You owe me nothing, not forgiveness, not even hatred. But I wanted you to know that I saw you on television. You are stronger than any of us ever deserved. That is your justice. Richard Cole." She folded the letter slowly, a long breath escaping her. "Justice," she murmured. "Maybe." She looked out at the city lights, bright and endless, and whispered into the quiet. "I was the girl you threw away. But I became the woman you'll never forget." Weeks later, Elena attended the opening of Aurelia's new headquarters, a towering structure of glass and light. Reporters surrounded her again, asking questions about her journey, her empire, her forgiveness. She smiled gracefully and answered the last one only. "Forgiveness isn't something you give to others," she said. "It's something you give yourself when you finally stop bleeding." The crowd applauded. Cameras flashed. And as she stood there beneath the golden lights, Elena Ward, the girl once discarded, felt something lift inside her. Not revenge. Not triumph. Peace. Real, fragile peace. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more original novel stories. And stay tuned, our next story is coming soon.